You know, there are a lot of things in this game, but I think one of my favorites are the concept behind the archons. Each one representing an element, nation, ideology, how they essentially work for Celestia, and a lot of the mystery surrounding them, and the fact that they're basically gods. They also have different names like Barbados, Morax, Beelzebub. Wait, Beelzebub? I know that name. That's the name of the demon that corresponds with the sin of gluttony. I should know. Hold on a minute. Morax and Barbados are also the names of demons. Does that mean that these guys are actually demons? Nah, I think it's just a reference or what they're based on. They wouldn't take it that far. But what if I took it that far? Hello everybody, it's your pal E.V.A here, and yep, a few YouTube videos ago, I redrew my drawings for the 4 archons from Genshin Impact, sticking with their original designs. But now, I'm throwing all of that away. These guys are about to get demonized. The concept is to basically just give them designs and a story that more closely resemble the demons their names are based on. I also decided to throw in a bit of lore from each demons for their respected regions. So, for example, yokai for Inazuma because based on Japan, etc. And before you ask, is this just going to be me turning the archons edgy? Yes, because these are going to be very different designs. Instead of fumbling with the designs while making the full drawing, I decided I would make a quick concept sketch beforehand for each one. This really helps in deciding the shape language and color palettes I would need to use. And that's pretty much it. Now with that, let's draw them. This time, I actually did decide to draw everyone in their correct order. So we're starting this one with Barbados, the demon of the wind. The actual demon is said to take the form of a human archer or hunter and is found in forests. He has the ability to speak to animals and can tell the future, conciliates friends and rulers, and can lead men to treasure hidden by the enchantments of magicians. If you couldn't tell, I found these on different articles like Wiki Fandom and stuff, so some of this isn't going to be in my own words. I'll try to link some of the articles I used in the description below if you're curious for more info. Some common things I found were like the demon Booer may appear when the sun is in the sign of Sagittarius. Your guess is as good as mine of what that means. I don't know, but it might be a bit important later. As far as anything relating to German demons though, I couldn't really find anything other than stuff about Faust and Mephistopheles. I don't know German, I'm sorry. So I figured that instead of having specific types of demons, the demons I should use for reference are more classic Christian ones like imps and stuff. And I also found the symbol of Barbados, and I was going to use that for reference as well. With all of that information, I made this rough concept sketch. For all of these, I tried basing them off of their true archon forms, but I also tried including at least some of his normal playable form into his design. I gave him a slightly more revealing outfit with a lot more sharper edges, with the sharp shoulder pieces, these leg warmer things, and having the edge of his robe being ripped. I also added these arm cuff things referencing his human form, where he also has the same thing, and his collar thing with a pendant that was supposed to look like the center of the symbol here. I don't know if that really translates though. These triangle things on the robe are meant to look like the ones from the symbol, which I think are supposed to be like trumpets. I'm not sure. And to make him more demon-like, I gave him grayer skin with limbs that fade to black, because limbs fading to another color is just a thing that us character designers do. And it looks like frostbite, yes, but we do it anyway because it looks good. And I added a bunch of swirly shapes to look like wind. I also gave him some curved demon horns, pointy ears, and instead of just normal wings, 4 black wings. I had his this plan on the beginning, and I think it creates a really cool silhouette. The 4-winged look, it looks really cool, almost biblically accurate angel vibes, and I like that. I also made his braids longer, which I actually ended up making everyone's hair longer for some reason. I guess longer hair just equals more demon-like for some reason. But making a concept sketch like this really helps, and I would recommend if you're ever going to do like a type of concept like this, do a concept sketch first, even if it's just like I just basically use like the same base for all of these, and just drew like different things on top of them. But it really helps because, like I said, it helps with like the clothes, the hair, and the color palette in general. The colors are always the thing that I always have the toughest time with unless I plan it out first. So yeah. For the drawing, I went with a similar swirly composition to his normal drawing. Again, I did end up adding some more details, but nothing too major. Although I did end up adding more see-through elements, like his hood, the end of his robes, and the edges of his wings. Rendering him was super fun, and I actually think he might be my favorite designer of the group, although I do actually like the designs I did for all of them, which is a lot rarer than you would think. I gave him 2 props, his lyre and his bow, and drew him like he was summoning them or creating them from the wind. Although I will admit, I did just end up reusing the bow from the redraw I did, and his lyre from the original one. Listen, those took too long to draw, and I just needed the silhouette, so it's fine. I know I also reused Strongly Spirit in that redraw and the tree for write-ins. Sometimes you just gotta look for ways that'll save time and sanity, mostly sanity. I regret nothing. Speaking of which, I think I might have also reused the background, but did change it quite a bit. I added a much stormier sky and also some birds to try to add some animals, but I do blur them out quite a bit because they're poorly drawn, and I don't like them. But it's okay, they're blurred. You don't need to see them. They're there though. For drawing the wind, I tried making it much more subtle, but still visibly there. And of course adding some leaves, but black this time because edgy. You might have also noticed the 4 crowns on the sketch, which of course is a reference to the 4 kings from the original tale. Which is funny because in Venti's lore there's the whole thing with the 4 winds, so I think that's neat. As the rest of the footage is playing, I thought I'd share the story behind this version of the character because I not only had to make the designs but basically a whole AU story as well, which was kind of inspired by the lore of Beelzebub somehow, but I'll get into that later. Keep in mind, I don't know every single detail about the Genshin Impact lore because I don't read, and the game is always updating, so obviously a lot of things will change. Things about like the certain mysteries of the game will get revealed. So forgive me if I say anything wrong. That is either like currently wrong or will like in the future be proven wrong. I don't know, but for now, the tale of the demon wind, the wind of the demon. Let's begin. Hi, Future Gracious E.V.A. here. So I decided the sections that I had previously recorded were not that great, and I didn't want you to listen to myself trying to voice act because I was trying to do that. So you get me just talking about the story instead. I'm sorry if you're looking forward to that, but trust me, you do not want to hear that because it was bad. So here's Barbados' story. Long ago, the people of Mondstadt lived in peace under the watchful eye of their god Barbados, once a simple wind spirit, now the animal archon and god of freedom. As the years went by, however, the archon started to lose more and more of his power. Although he did not pay much mind to this, the reason for this would soon be discovered. And it all started with Conria. Conria is still a really big mystery in this story, but it's widely known that it was one of the last times that the world of Tevat knew true peace. When Barbados went to join his fellow archons in the battles, something happened to the once peaceful archon of freedom. Before he was a god as a simple wind spirit, he saw the birth of Mondstadt in exchange for many lives, including one he loved most. It was this time that he learned the terrible truth behind this and why this was the case, behind Celestia, the true purpose of humans, and why they came to Tevat in the first place. The horrible truth drove the Archon insane and drove him to run, with the people of Mondstadt believing that Conria had taken the life of their beloved god. But it was actually Celestia that tried to take his life since he learned too much. However, he survived, and he became the demon that we see here, Earl of the Winds and one of the first of the 7 demons of Tevat. When the people of Mondstadt learned that Barbados was now a demon, seeing this as a betrayal, they turned to Dvalin to become their protector. In the current timeline, Dvalin would start acting in much the same way as we see in the beginning of the game, and I even imagine that when we see Venti trying to talk to Dvalin, we actually see Barbados getting into his head, although we wouldn't know that that was what he was doing at the time. Eventually, you and the other Knights of Livonius realize that it's Barbados' doing and also the Abyss, so you work together to try and stop him. And that's pretty much the story. It's pretty similar to his original one, but with the twist of how he became a demon. Yeah, and I think it makes sense in the story. Again, I don't know if it matches up entirely to the full lore of Genshin Impact. Genshin has so much lore, I don't know if anyone really knows all of it, but I tried my best. But there's the first picture of this video. Yay, Barbados, Demon of the Wind. I really like him, and I really like his design, and I hope you do too. But with that, now it is on to Morax. Morax is our next demon. He was the most interesting because the demon he was based on was really explicitly about astrology and geology. It is said that he teaches astronomy and all other liberal sciences and gives good and wise familiars, and that he knows the virtues of all herbs and precious stones. Basically, if you're into astrology charts and all that, this is your guy. He's usually depicted as a bull man, either with the head of a bull or the body of one. However, I didn't really base his appearance on that. The Chinese demon I also pulled inspiration from is the Yao, which are said to be supernatural creatures with uncanny properties, who also have attractive characteristics and the ability to shapeshift, create illusions, and mind control, as well as the Yao Gui. I think I said that? No, I don't think that's how you say that, but I don't. Yao Gui. Yao Gui. I don't know. Which I think have some relations to ghosts and demons, and the terms related to natural phenomena and freakish occurrences. Both already have some things in common with Zhongli, and of course for his physical design, I also pulled in inspiration from dragons. His symbol, I believe, is this one. I didn't know where else to find it. I didn't really actually incorporate it into a design, but that's okay. For his concept design, I based a lot more on the story idea I had for him, and I figured the best way to incorporate the astrology thing was to have him have a connection with the void. This is because if you look at Child's Fatui monster form, you can see stars in the void that is on the inside of his cape. And that's exactly what I imagined when picturing his design. Because Child got that form when visiting the void, at least I think, if memory serves correctly, I think that's his lore. I don't know though, I don't really pay attention to Child's lore. I just beat him up whenever I need artifacts. And so I wanted that to influence Morax's design. I gave his limbs some dragon-like scale things that would fade out into purple with sparkles. At first, I was going to give him either a cape or a long skirt that would have the void galaxy thing, but when I was drawing the picture, I decided to put that in his hair instead, since I already made that longer and made his skirt thing a much more simple half-transparent look, because that's attractive. I gave him lots of these diamond shapes as both accessories and in his skin to both allude to dragon scales. I almost said dragon tails. That's a different thing. And his connection to geology. I gave him longer ears, horns, and fangs, all dragon-like, and made his scleras this dark red color with just a slit for a pupil. While I was drawing him, I had a hard time with his hair and skirt thing in the post that he was in, but like I said, once I adjusted the design, I was able to figure it out. I wanted him to be sitting on a cool spiky rock throne with an edited version of his spear. This is partially inspired by his statue design, and although mainly the legs were tricky to figure out, I managed to get past that. Drawing the rest of him was super fun. I really like how his design turned out, especially in the drawing. As you can imagine, rendering him was also super fun because I got to add in a lot of gradients, which I like, and sparkles. He also, if I'm looking back at the footage correctly, took the longest to draw out of any of them. He took I think almost 4 or 5 hours. That's a lot of time, but that's okay. If you look closely as well, you can see that he has some pretty heavy eye bags, which I fully intended. Actually, I gave eye bags to everyone, but his are especially big, because I imagine he's very tired. I do realize that colors for him are very much very deviating a bit from his normal colors with all of the purples, but because of this I did try to keep the purple a more warm toned one. And surprisingly, the orange and purple went really well together. With the bits of black I included as well, it gives the whole look a bit of a Halloween-y feel, so that's kind of neat. Drawing the spear was kind of hard because I realized I didn't have enough room on the canvas to make it bigger, so I kept trying to adjust that, and it does look a bit short, a little bit stocky for a spear, but yeah. As you can see, I included some constellations and stars in his hair because it looks fancy. For the background, I wanted him to be in a cave with a background full of stars behind him. I didn't go super detailed with the constellations since they would be mostly hidden, and I roughly shaded all the layers of stone for the cave. To make the throne, I drew and painted the back, sit at the seat thing, and back arm behind him, and placed the second arm in front of him so it would look like he was leaning on it. I tried making the throne not look perfect since it would be made out of jagged rocks. And for the foreground, I used my jagged diamond brush around him, used some more stars and more stuff that I think looks shiny. Like I said, I really like how this design turned out, although I will say I do think that his limbs kind of blend into his hair too much in this drawing, so I probably should have used a bit of a darker color for those. But yeah, now it's time to hear a little bit of context for this design because I have ideas and I'm going to share with them now. So in the story, Morax was once the sacred god of E.V.A and contracts. He was the oldest and one of the strongest of the 7 archons. He was also present during the siege of Conria. Unlike many of the other archons, it's not here that Morax turns into a demon. And after the siege, he had witnessed firsthand what had happened to the others. Well, probably not firsthand, but he knew what happened. Like how Barbados and the Electro Archon went insane, and the tragic fall of the Dendro Archon, etc. He suspected that it was in Conria to blame though, so he had to find the truth. And what better place than where nothing could be hidden, the abyss. I don't know if that's actually true. Again, I don't really know much about the lore here, but we're trying. I'm not entirely sure what he would have saw down there, but when he arrived into the surface, he too became a demon. When it was revealed what he had become, no one was sure what to think, but especially the Adeptus were in utter shock, especially when some of them have the task of killing demons. Zhao and all that. However, unlike the others of his kind, it appeared that he had no plans of chaos or destruction, wishing only to share the truths that he had learned. Some of the Adeptus still tried to fight him, and those who fought him lost, and those who joined him still work for him today. The truth that Morax had learned was something that could not be told to mortals outright, so he took what he learned from the abyss and wrote messages in the stars and the stones that they collect, and those who follow Morax would be able to pick up the story bit by bit. However, many fear that one day he'll also try to attack, for he is one of the 7 demons of Tevat, Lord of the Mountains and Stars. In the current timeline, you get to E.V.A and learn that the people have tried to contact him in a ceremony, much like the one we see in game, but something catastrophic happens and everyone thinks that they angered him, so they ask you to try and reach out to him. This might have actually just been the Fatui, however, but you'll have to discover that as you go along. It's Morax's story, very interesting. I like the concept that he's not really bad. Like, well, none of the demons are like bad or good. It's in this story you have to decide for yourself whether you agree with what the demons are doing and what they had learned and stuff like that. But with Morax is just chilling. He's just trying to do what's right. He still loves his people of E.V.A and he still is trying to get them to understand the truth as well. I feel like this timeline of the story when you get to the E.V.A chapter would be much more of a mystery and much less of a I can't think of the name right now, but collecting game than it is in the main one. I thought the E.V.A timeline in the OG game was alright, although it was a little bit fetch quest is a bit of a fetch quest, but I feel like this one would be much more of a mystery. Was it Morax or who else could it have been? We don't know. But anyway, I hope you like the drawing. I liked how it turned out. Again, it took me actually the longest out of any of the drawings here, but I still really like how it turned out. Next up, of course, was Raiden E, or Beelzebub. This one was the most interesting, and you'll see why in a bit. Beelzebub has a much more clearly Christian origin, being an angel that fell from heaven and becoming a high-ranking demon. Now, you see where I got the idea for everyone's backstory. And like I said in the beginning, Beelzebub is often represented by the sin of gluttony, and known as the Lord of Flies. For the picture, however, I not only wanted to include Raiden E, but her sister, Raiden Makoto, aka Baal. Baal is described as a hoarsely voiced king with the power to make men invisible and ruling over 66 legions of demons, and is said to take the form of a cat, toad, man, some combination thereof, or other diverse shapes. Not very specific, but okay. Now, the specific type of demon I chose, of course, is a yokai, which I actually based most of their design on, since there wasn't a lot of super interesting things about their namesakes that made sense for them. The word yokai is composed of the kanji for attractive, calamity, and apparition, mystery, and suspicious. They mostly take humanoid form, but are said to also have the ability to shapeshift. I wasn't quite sure what they were supposed to look like until I searched up yokai character designs, and I realized that I have actually seen this type of design quite a bit. In fact, I even think Power from Chainsaw Man has a little bit of yokai-ness, mostly in her horns. But yeah, I thought that was cool. Like I said, I mainly ended up basing their designs on the yokai, and since to my knowledge we don't know what their ultimate archons forms look like, their designs ended up looking the closest to how they look in game, and Raiden's also ended up being the most complicated, or more Genshin-like, I should say. As you can tell, one of the biggest differences was their horns. For Baal, I used her horns based on the Shogun puppet boss, since I like how the shape language kind of looks like a crown. It kind of fits into the whole horsely king thing. And for Beelzebub, I gave her more typical yokai style straight horns, with one of them being broken. However, I did actually curve them a bit in the final design just to make them match a bit more to her sisters. I also gave both of them very similar looks to how they are in their backstory cutscenes, but with Beelzebub having a more armored look. I also changed both of their hairstyles, with Balls being down and long and Beelzebub having a high ponytail. Now, drawing these two was really interesting. I wanted Ball to be ghostly and floaty above Beelzebub in their shrine thing. It's the place from the memory cutscene in Sumeru. I just thought it looked really pretty and I wanted to draw it. However, I was really struggling with Beelzebub's design. Go figure, since her pose was also the hardest for me to figure out in the last one, it would also be the hardest to figure out in this one. I also was jumping around a lot more with my process. I would work on the pose, then I'd work on Ball, then the background, then back to something else. So yeah, a less streamlined than my normal way, so I'm sorry if the footage is a bit jumpy. On top of that, I also wanted to do something different with Ball and paint her. I even started with grayscale values before putting in the base colors. I don't really think that made much of a difference, but okay. I don't quite remember, but I believe you might not be able to see that because I forgot to record it, or at least like a large portion of it. So sorry for that. And eventually, I figured out what to do with Beelz's pose. However, I'm still not very happy with it. But the main point of these is to show off their design, so I guess that makes it a little better. Not only was her design similar to her canon one, but the artwork as a whole ended up being pretty close to the last one I drew of her. So I pretty much used the same colors to shade her. And for the lighting, I added a bunch more lightning in this one, because she mad. She pretty mad. Look at her. She mad. Look at that. That's not happy. That's not happy at all. The last one wasn't happy either, but this wasn't. This one ain't happy at all. Again, for the background, I tried making it look like the one from that one cutscene, but most of that ended up being covered up by Ball anyway, so okay. For the wooden area, I tried making it look like it was wrecked and old by making the fence look like it was broken. You may also be able to see some poorly painted in bloody visions on the ground from the people she probably murdered. I also forgot to mention, but for some last minute details, I gave Beels some much bigger fangs to look like the masks I saw on a lot of yokai characters wearing, and some battle wounds. And after lowering the transparency on Ball and adding some cherry blossom petals because no one can stop me, this piece was done. Although it is my least favorite out of the group, I don't dislike it. And now for the story portion, the story time. It's story time, everyone. Story time with Beelzebub. Okay. If Beelzebub has some people who don't like her in game, with all the rebellion and stuff, then pretty much everyone, except maybe a few people in Inazuma, hate and fear her. Before the Age of Demons, during the birth of Inazuma, the two twins were born. One with the strike of lightning and one from the shadow that was cast, so very much like the original. Although they were meant to be the gods of this new land, the people saw them more as yokai from the mountains and felt more fear than love. This is because I would imagine that they very much look the same way as they do here. They both look very demon-like, very yokai-like, but they're supposed to be gods. However, despite this, Baal, the chosen Electro Archon, still saw the people of Inazuma as her people and vowed to protect them in the name of her sword. Beelzebub, however, was not as loyal to Inazuma, but rather to her sister, so she was fine with standing by her side and helping Inazuma to continue to progress. Beelzebub, however, started noticing that the humans were being gifted the powers of the elements through visions, and it was something that Beelzebub knew could lead to great danger. But Baal just saw it as more progress to Inazuma, and even saw it as an opportunity to teach the people how to protect themselves from harm and do great things. But then there was the War of Conria. Before the battle was won, Baal had stumbled upon the truth of Celestia, however unintentionally. Because of this, Celestia decided to strike her down in a desperate attempt and blame it on Conria, much like they tried to do with Barbados. But Beelzebub was there to see this, and as she held her dying sister in her arms, Baal tried communicating as much of what she learned to her sister before she died. Beelzebub took control of Inazuma, and to avenge her sister, started seizing and destroying everyone's visions by force. To keep them away from this, Beelzebub locked away the other yokai into the mountains, and although some have been able to escape, they still are hidden away to this day, and are forbidden from having any visions. And with the newfound wisdom she had gained, she went to work on creating inorganic life that would serve to be her sword. So this is where Raiden Shogun and possibly Scaramouche come in. Many have tried to flee Inazuma, many still try to fight, but most live in fear of the rule of the terrifying Lord of Lightning, Beelzebub, who is one of the dreaded 7 demons of Teyvat. In the main timeline, I would imagine that you definitely have a similar time to what we see in game, although instead of Beelzebub trying to attack you because of some confusing reasons, I wasn't quite sure of the whole ordeal with the Inazuma arc. I think she was just being tricked by the Fatui. I don't know. The Inazuma arc is kind of my least favorite, and it seems to be the general consensus that it's not the best out of the arcs by far, but instead she's very much attacking you intentionally and with the intent to kill you. I would actually imagine that instead of everyone trying to get you to fight Raiden, they would try to get you not to, as anyone who tries to stand up to her are seen as completely insane. Well, all except for a possible sly Kitsune who possibly tries to help you. And yeah, much like her design here, her story also ended up being much more closer to her original one, although she ended up being much more deadlier as a result of her main story, which is funny because she's already pretty deadly. Oh boy. Fun fact, Raiden Shogun was actually my first 5-star. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but she was my first 5-star, and she's been on my team for a long time, my main team. So yeah, but it was fun getting to draw her as a demon because I feel like that's really fun. Raiden A. I actually don't know if we're playing as Raiden Shogun or Raiden A, but yeah, this was fun to draw. And even though it was my least favorite out of the drawings, I still think it turned out pretty cool. Next was Nahida, or Booer. Fun fact, I had the idea for this whole thing a while ago, but couldn't really start because I didn't know what Nahida's Archon name was, until the cutscene where Scaramouche shouted it out. So, thanks Scara. Her design was the most interesting to figure out based on the information I found. So the demon Booer is said to teach natural and moral philosophy, logic, and the qualities and uses of all herbs and plants, and is also capable of healing all infirmities. All of that already makes perfect sense from Nahida. However, Booer also has a connection to Sagittarius and is commonly depicted with a lion head with 5 goat legs surrounding it. Yeah, I wasn't really sure how to go with that for this design, and I also couldn't find much about specific Egyptian demons, only finding stuff about ghosts, which are called Ak, I think, and often demons appear in the form of animals, most notably snakes, such as the one that Ra is always fighting. I also found this symbol and got to work. With less information than the others, I started designing her with the concept of overgrown, corrupted foliage. I made her dress longer and overall took her main design and made it simpler, while also adding this shawl thing. I actually did end up giving her more snake imagery, with some curved horns, some bracelets and anklets with swirly patterns, and having her skin be a light grayish skin tone. It's funny how both her and Barbados got the unnatural skin tone treatment. I guess that's like how my way of connecting them, since they both have such stuff to do with the Sagittarius symbol. I also made her hair slightly longer and added more braids around her head and in her ponytail. I also gave her the heart thing in the center of dress like the original one, but cut in half like a broken heart. Is it on the nose? Yes. But I also gave her a pattern at the bottom of her dress which references the Boer symbol. As you can tell, her design is the simplest, but I feel that that works. It gives her a much more childish feeling. For the artwork, I decided to have her be swinging on the swing that she has in game, with a dead Irminsul tree behind her. Very creepy, and that's what we were going for. Drawing front-facing sitting poses is a little tricky for me, but since her legs were mostly covered, I was able to get away with it. Drawing her overall was pretty easy, and you might notice some things I added, such as some spots on her skin and the eyes. The way I shaded them is almost like Morax's, but in the sclera, I decided to use a brush to create a swirly, almost starry texture. I really like the change in that. It's subtle, but you can see it. Shading her this time was also so much easier, since even though I was using green again for all the shadows, her skin was already an unnatural color, so it didn't look weird. For the swing, I also used a hard brush, filled in the seat, and lowered the opacity to bring in the same effect as in the game, and of course made it also glowy. The background was the hardest part about this, since the scene with the tree has wildly different colors than what I was going for here with more muted greens. I believe that what I did was I colored it mostly with the accurate colors, but then dimmed it pretty much all the way down. I also spent a bit of time on the tree, but you can barely see it, which is fine. Again, it's fine. This has only happened the second time already. It's okay. I'm fine. It's perfectly fine. I just need to learn not to spend so much time on the backgrounds. Well, actually, now I think about it, I think Nahida's also was like the one that took me the shortest amount of time to make, so yeah, overall it's fine. I kind of wanted to do a similar thing I did with the foreground foliage with the last piece, but really like multiply it and make it look overgrown and messy. I had fun working on those, and I also didn't include any flowers on the vines because it didn't really look creepy enough. But I was also just lazy. I also included a cage, similar to the one that she is in game, and drew it in a similar way to the swing. I knew I had to include something with the depiction of E.V.A from earlier, so I added this weird blob shape on the top that was supposed to look like a lion's mane. But just ignore that. It's fine. It looks horrible, I know, but don't just ignore it. And finally, I added a chromatic effect to the whole thing. And you might see why in the story in a moment, but also I notice a lot with Nahida's whole theme of there's a lot more like tech imagery and almost video game imagery with Nahida as a whole, and so that's also part of the reason why I did that. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with how this one turned out, and I really like the creepy child swinging while staring at you vibe. It's good. It's a good vibe. Well, maybe not actually a good vibe, but it's good for this one, so we're gonna go with it. And now for the story, the last one of this group. Let's begin. This story starts with the greater Lord Rukkhadevaka, the god of wisdom. However, she did not actually have all the wisdom she thought she had. The whole forbidden knowledge thing would still be there, and it would have almost led Sumeru to its end. Although Greater Lord Rukkhadevaka did everything she could to erase the knowledge and bring peace back, she couldn't help but feel curious about the forbidden knowledge, and eventually she couldn't help but look deeper into it. But it turns out that the forbidden knowledge is tied into the truth of Celestia, and the plague that was contained inside it started to grow within her. Before she lost herself completely with the last sliver of mortality that she had, she ran to the Tree of Life, which too was also slowly being corrupted. She had to make a sacrifice to destroy it. Before that, she took 3 branches from the tree so that she could choose one of them to be her new life. One that was completely pure, one that was completely corrupt, and one that had both qualities. She chose the one with both qualities, and just like that, the Booer that we know was born. The sages found her like last time, but were horrified since they ended up finding a demon rather than a god, so they decided to take her away and hide her in fear of what she could do, like the other demons. However, Lesser Lord Kusanali was far more powerful than the sages could ever dream of, but she decided to play along with their game and stay locked away. But she was still able to see everything. She saw that there was still corruption in the world, especially in the grown-ups, and she saw that there was purity still in the children, full of life, hopes, and dreams. In her eyes, she saw how the adults were making a world for them that they could only live in fear. That sentence made sense, by the way. So the Lesser Lord reached out to the children in their dreams and took them away to a place she saw as safer, away from the adults. Of course, this angered everyone, and the sages tried getting the information of where she kept the kids out of her, but nothing worked. Now everyone knows of the existence of Booer, the child of Dendro, one of the 7 demons of Tevat. And in the main story, I would imagine similar events would take place, but as you enter the academia, you find it strange that there are no children around. And when you bring it up with someone, they start tearing up or avoiding the question. At some point, I would also imagine that Booer would enter your mind to try and talk to you, mainly to learn that what exactly you are and where you come from, but also potentially to get you on her side. I would also maybe imagine that when this happened, you don't actually know who she is at first, much like we see in the main timeline where you see her but you don't exactly know who she is yet. You aren't quite aware who this strange child is, but then learn that it is actually the demon that everyone's been talking about, the same one who took away the children and stuff. But in her eyes, she sees it as an act of good. She sees it as an act of preserving the purity of hopes and dreams and keeping it away from corruption, even through an extremely extreme act as taking kids away from their parents and families. So yeah, and that's where the whole thing with Booer having both the qualities of good and bad, because like in her eyes, she's just trying to keep the purity alive, but like it is kind of a very extreme act to go to. And it also, she is like thinking like much like a child. She's still very much like childlike in her ways of thinking, and so this whole thing would very much just be like her like jumping to like a thing that she thought would be the best way to do it, even though there could have been other ways to do it. And who knows, maybe you're the one who tries to talk to her about it and is like, hey, that was like not cool, maybe you should think about other ways to preserve the purity you want to, or something like that. I don't know, but yeah, that's pretty much it. I think this picture turned out quite well. I think it turned out very nice and spooky, like the spooky child that she probably is in this story. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed that last story, and that's pretty much it. And with all of that brings us to the end of this saga. Let me know what you guys think. I had so much fun with this video, even though the script took me like weeks to finish. The drawings as well as the story behind them were super fun to create. I do kind of want to make like animatics of the story proportions, sort of like the style of the story cutscenes in game, not the 3D ones, the 2D ones. I can't 3D anything. I can't 3D anything. Nothing at all, not even my thoughts. Everything is 2D in my world. But yeah, I'm not sure though. But if you like the idea, you can tell me that below, and maybe if enough people want it, I can start working on that. Or maybe I'll just do that on myself, because I tend to impulsively start things and I may or may not finish them. But yeah, if these designs have sparked your interests, you can see them on my Instagram linked below. If you want some more stories, I also have my webcomic linked below. It's not of Genshin Impact, it's of my own original story, Mysteries of Dysteria and Lost Hearts, the full of it is also down there, no longer updating, if that's fine. Bit of an odd segue from stories to my own works, I know, but yeah, anyway, I hope you all liked this video and that you're all doing well, and I'll see you next time. Bye.